Good afternoon, soul babies. We are here at my studio, Signals Music, today, and we are going to walk you through a fun mix breakdown, and I'm going to show you how I dealt with the latest single that is called Lunar Fantasy. So I mix inside of Cubase with a little bit of hardware. Good.
Soul babies!
Okay, so here we are. We are looking at the final mix session in Cubase here. So the first thing that you'll notice is because we are symphonic metal, there's a lot of stuff. Yeah, it just keeps going. But my brain can't handle all of that. That's too much for my brain to handle. So you'll notice a lot of these tracks, some of them are grayed out here. So they're actually, these individual tracks are disabled. And as part of prepping before I mix this song, a lot of them are actually, I will take all of these, which are basically kind of all the paddy, keyboard, synthy things, and they get turned, they get all bounced down to a stereo pair of tracks. So then I'm only dealing with 2 tracks instead of like, I don't know, what is that, like 16, 20? It's a lot. So I'll come up here, I'll do that with all the strings. So we've got, I mean, different registers of strings, different articulations, but all of that is combined into just 2 tracks that you see here. Same with brass. Now, when we get into pianos, these I did want to leave the ability to manipulate individually, but they're all being bussed together. You know, you'll notice all these electric piano tracks here, and I think even the organ are showing up on a stereo pair. I think this piano, all of these, including the harpsichord, are showing up on one stereo pair. We're doing the same thing. We have like some kind of fake choir vocals here. They're all going to just one pair. Right here, all of these are sampled choir. This is all program choir. And again, it's all the same. It's one thing, so we'll just treat it all the same. Vocals, a lot of stuff is bussed together as well. Coming down here to percussion, again, all of these tracks are going to show up on one group track, which we'll show you in a minute. And then the only things that are really stemmed out like individually are guitars. Actually, that's not true because this is quad tracked, but all 4 are going to one stereo pair. So we're playing back basically 2 takes per side on one stereo pair. But they're processed the same way, they're the same part, they're going to sound the same. Drums, the only things that are really combined are rooms. We've got 2 rooms. One is an actual pair of room mics in the room. The other is kind of a fake room created with the overhead mics and reverb. So those, all 4 of those go to one pair. Toms, we've got, how many do we have? 6 of them?
6 of them!
That all goes to one pair. And then everything else is pretty much taken care of until we get down to, like I said, the keyboards, which are all combined just to 2 tracks there. So that is when you're dealing with something like symphonic metal with a whole bunch of stuff going on. That's probably the most important part, is getting your prep work done so that it makes sense to you.
What my friend is trying to say is that Solborn is like onions. You look like that joke physically hurt you.
No, that's just my arthritis. Okay, so here we are. We have flipped over to my mixing page here, so you can have a look at what's going on. The first thing I want to show you, I'm basically going to go, we're going to kind of work a little bit backwards here, but this is the way I start. Here is my master stereo output, 2-bus, 2-track, whatever you want to call it. There's some plugins on here. These plugins are basically my preset. I start every mix with them on there, and I don't really touch them. So this is just a meter, so I can see what I'm doing. And then we have the Stephen Slate FG Red bus compressor. And you can have a look at what that is doing here. I'm always aiming for about 3 dB of compression. Any more and it kind of just gets a little squishy. Next in the chain, I have the Waves SSL bus compressor. It's not actually doing any compression. The reason this is here is for the fade out function, which is used to fade out the song at the end. And then we've got Pultec, the Waves Tweedtech EQ, and we're doing 3, those aren't dB, that's just a random scale, but boosting 60 at 3, and we're boosting 8K at 2. And that's it. So that just gives me a little bit of sparkle on top and helps me get some body in the low end without having to really fight for it. So let's have a look at the thing that I do. Drums. What do we got going on here? So the kick drum is actually the only sample in this track. So let me just go down here and find our drums. And I'm just going to solo up all the drums and see what we've got going on here. That's pretty fun. That hits pretty hard. And like I said, only sample we got in there is our kick drum, which we have basically, I think this was the Stephen Slate. We've got an inside kick mic here. And what do we got going on there? So let's look at our EQ first of all. Ooh, boy, we got some stuff going on there. A whole bunch of top end because this is heavy metal, and apparently in heavy metal, kick drum must also be click drum. So yeah, whole bunch of 8K boosted there, whole bunch of 60 boosted because we also want it to go boom, and then just pulling out a bunch of this kind of low mid because this just sounds like this, and no one wants that. And then what else do we have going on here?
What do you mean? This is how I talk to my girlfriend all the time.
Looks like the only other thing we have going on is just a little bit of the just Cubase channel compressor. 2-to-1 ratio. We're not doing a lot. That just gives it a little bit of smack there. Then we have the sub kick, which as you can hear is all low end, and all we're doing is just again pulling out some of that mid range. No compression, nothing else going on. Snare drum, my favorite thing. Snare drums are my favorite thing. I love them way more than people. So what do we got going on here? Let's look at our EQ, and as you can see, there is a whole bunch of stuff going on here. We're just rolling off some low end there at about 84 hertz, boosting a whole bunch of low end to get some body on it at just under 200 hertz, then cranking some mid range. I find that right around 2.5K is where you get the sound of like stick hitting the drum, especially with the rim shot. So that just kind of helps it smack you in the face, as a snare drum should. Then we got a whole bunch of kind of sizzle up on top here. Now, in terms of what else we're doing to it, we're actually doing some hardware compression on this one. Okay, so if we come down here and look at this rack, we've got in here, this is what I'm using for snare compression. This is the ART Pro channel. It's actually a full channel strip, but it's got insert points. So we're actually just using the compressor section here. And you know, we're doing a good amount of smacking it there. What are our settings here? We're at 4:1 ratio. We're doing about 6 dB of makeup gain, fast attack and fast release. This is it's a tube compressor, so even when those are fast, they're not super duper fast, and as you can hear, it's not wiping off any transients there. But, you know, if we just bypass that, it's still pretty fun, but that just gives us a little bit more attitude and puts it up in your face there. Now, I also find the snare bottom to be super duper important. And I actually, if we look at the EQ here, kind of a smiley face thing going on, but I'm actually adding a fair amount of body from the bottom snare as well. And that just kind of works with the top snare. And a whole bunch of fizz. And just a little bit of compression, I think. Yeah, we're going only 2:1 ratio, but we're going super duper fast. And that just gets a whole bunch of sizzle out. You know, if you take that off, it's there, but that adds some sustain and some fatness to the under snare sound. So, overheads. What do we got going on overheads here? Probably not a lot. No. A little bit of top end to get some sizzle from the cymbals. A little bit of body down there. And no dynamics going on. Then we got our rooms. So like I said, this is actually 4 audio tracks just combined down to 2 channels here, so stereo. And what's going on here? So we're getting a little bit of mid-range boost here, trying to bring out some punch and some kind of trashiness to it. And just a little bit of compression. Nothing too crazy. One thing I find is a lot of people go, especially with metal, it's like, oh, room mic, I gotta smash it, crush it, destroy it, make it dead. But all you're doing really is turning up cymbals, and there's usually enough cymbals. I want to hear snare drum, because like I said, snare drum is better than people. Okay, tom-toms. So you can see here, it's 2 tracks, so basically all of the 6 toms,
6 of them,
are just bust down to these 2 tracks here. Let me go through and find some toms here. Where do we have some toms? It looks like we have toms right here, so we can have a listen and look at what's going on here. Hopefully we can have a listen. There we go. So it's kind of a similar smiley face thing going on. Bunch of body in the low end, bunch of presence and smack from the stick on the top end, and again, just doing a little touch of compression. Nothing crazy. Cymbals, spot mics. We've got a ride cymbal, just pulling up a bit of top end. Hi-hat, pulling up a bit of top end and just taking a little bit of harshness out there. Now we have, this is kind of like a snare, sort of like a snare parallel channel. It sounds like this. It's not that exciting on its own, but what we're doing is using an envelope shaper here to basically extend the sustain of the drum. So if I turn that off, sounds like a normal snare, but this, we get a lot of kind of the ring and the body of the drum. So when you combine that with the main snare, you know, if I turn this off, you've got a good amount of kind of ring and presence there, but this just kind of puts it a little bit more in your face and makes it, you know, kind of like how Lars Ulrich would sound if, like, it was good. Okay, so we do have a parallel drum bus going on here. So we'll go down here and have a look at what that's doing. I call it crush because let's crush it. And we've got a Waves DBX 160 plugin. It's not doing a ton, like it's going like 7-8 dB of compression, but you know, if we mute this, it definitely adds some aggression and attitude to our drums. And there's a little bit of EQ, just a little boom and fizz, just to bring it forward. And we also have drum reverb, and it's actually 2 reverbs, and I just kind of use the faders to combine those 2 reverbs how I want them. This is an awesome plugin by Tokyo Audio Labs, and it's just a super like old school digital sounding reverb. It's crunchy, it's not hi-fi at all, but it's great. Then we have, what's this? Oh yeah, this is fun. So this is the stock Cubase impulse response reverb, but it's using some free impulse responses from the Vercasti M7. So yeah, I mean, if we get rid of the reverb, there's still some ambience there from the rooms, but that just opens it up. And I can automate those up and down depending on how much reverb I need throughout the song. Bass! The bass! So, we'll go down here. It's 4 tracks. Basically, what I've done here... Mike's
Basically.
again. The only thing that was actually recorded was just a DI, but what I do is I duplicate that a few times, and we basically end up with, so I keep the clean DI track, we have a Sans amp track, then I use an amp simulator, so we have an actual bass amp sound, but what I love about using an amp simulator for bass is that you have no phase problems. So you're not worrying about the distance between the speaker and the microphone and that being in phase with the DI, which obviously is not moving through air. So I love using an amp sim because there's no phase problems. And then I will duplicate that amp sim track and basically just wipe off everything above about 100 hertz. So it's literally just low end. So we can go through and see what those all sound like. So we have just the DI here, and our Sans amp, nice and crunchy, got a little bit of top end on it. There's our amp, that's got some body, it's still got some drive, but it's got a little bit of fatness to it. And then this is just the sub track, which as you can hear, it's all low end, but you combine all these and it's really killer combination of like crispy like top end, but it still has body and fatness. And then each of them are going to the Waves 1176. It's doing, you know, 3-4 dB of compression, nothing crazy. No EQ. Typically I find when I do this I don't have to EQ because I've got everything I need there, but I do send them off to a little bit of chorus just to spread them a little bit so they're not just right up the center. Guitars. Here's what we got going on. It's pretty fizzy, you know. We try to sound like we come from Finland, where everything is cold and fizzy in the guitars. But I like it. I do have a bit more mid-range, I think, going on there. So let's have a look at the EQ. So we're rolling off bottom end and top end, and we come down, we're boosting a whole good amount of bottom end, because there are metal guitars. They must be fat guitars. As politically incorrect as possible, these guitars must be super obese. Then We've got, here's the fizz I'm talking about, right up at 8K. Give some presence so it can kind of cut through. And I am pushing up a little bit of mid-range too. That helps kind of keep it so you can hear the notes and the chord changes. You know, if you take that mid-range out, it's still kind of heavy, but it's a little noisy. But put that back in. And all of a sudden, the notes and the chord changes come back. So those are our rhythm guitars.
See, could you imagine if we reamped all this shit through like a Swedish chainsaw tone?
What if we actually reamped it through a chainsaw? That sounds more fun to me.
It would.
I think, Mike, I think you actually need to learn to play the chainsaw. Yeah. Okay, more guitars. Okay, so that's our rhythm guitars, and then we've got, I don't remember what those are, to be totally honest, so let's look. Hey, it's been a few weeks, don't judge me. Oh, they're like some lead bits. Okay, so let's see what those sound like. Ah, that's in the chorus. So what do we got going on here? No bottom end on these, because they're all just their lead bits. They're not rhythm. They need less pancakes. Maybe a waffle, but less pancakes on the leads. Just some mid-range to bring out notes and some top end. And then we have a guitar solo. Oh, sorry, that's a keyboard solo. Anyways, here's what the keyboard solo is doing. Looks like pretty much nothing. That's what's fun about synths. They're usually pretty much ready to go. I just roll off a little bit of low end, we send them to a reverb, and you can call it a keyboard solo. It's so easy, it's great. Okay, now we're gonna go from that super easy keyboard solo to the hard stuff. The orchestra. I'm gonna solo up. We've got our strings, we've got our brass, and we've got our percussion. And let's find a fun place for some orchestra. Actually, I think we're probably doing pretty good right about where we are. Let's go over like here. See what we got going on. Okay, so first thing, orchestra, it pretty much always needs a good amount of reverb. So just kind of like what I did with the drums, I'm sending this off to two different reverbs. They're both just impulse responses of actual hardware, of old hardware reverbs. So there's like a Lexicon 480, Yamaha SPX 90. They're both some sort of a hall type preset, like a 5-second hall on the SPX 90. The large church preset on the 480. So that just gives things a lot of presence and space. If I play this section back and pull it out, you'll hear that it's less epic. You know, it's orchestra. It sounds programmed without the reverb, that's for sure. But you add that back in, you get some space, you get some ambience, kind of get some more imaging, and that gives it some realness for sure. So what's actually going on here? Let's look at our strings. No EQ on the strings, but we are doing some compression with a Fairchild emulation plugin from Waves.
No fair.
No Fairchild. Don't be a child. Actually do. It's more fun. As you can see, I was doing a fun amount of compression. We're kind of smacking the strings. But that's to kind of get some saturation out of them, bring them forward so that they cut through drums and guitar and all the metal stuff. let's look at our brass here. Just a little bit of top end for EQ. It's just adding a little bit of presence again. You know, without it, it's kind of dull. Put that in, it just kind of cuts through. And some compression that's not as heavy as the strings, but again, we're knocking it back there, so it's kind of evening out any peaks and creating a larger space. And percussion, we will have a look at here. What are we doing with percussion? Little bit of EQ, just kind of like some mids to bring some smack, and that's it. Yep, it's just going to the hall there, the hall reverb. And pretty much last but not least, we have we've got keyboards over here. Like I said, we have electric piano, and then we have piano and harpsichord are actually on the same stereo channel here, because I found when I was doing the prep, they're pretty similar in kind of percussiveness, in frequency response, so I was like, yeah, we'll just stick them all together, see if that works, and it did. So we'll just have a look at what we're doing there, and we're coming up on a piano bit here. There we go. Whole bunch of top end, you know, to get the sound of the hammers there. And going back with a DBX 160, and we're hitting it pretty hard, but we're only at like a 2-to-1 ratio, so it's not really smacking anything down. But it's just keeping those percussive hammers in line with the actual body and resonance of the piano. Then we have electric piano, which mostly ends up in the very start. And it's kind of the synthy intro to the song. And all we're doing there is just giving a little bit of kind of high mids and a little bit of high end, just so that those notes poke through. No effects. Oh, we are compressing a little bit here. It's just kind of keeping the dynamics present, keeping it up front. Now we're going to get into our vocals. Let's start with the lead vocal. We should be coming into a verse right here.
This vocal that we recorded in a fancy studio in the depths of town.
Okay.
Only the best.
So let's look at the EQ here. It's fairly aggressive. We're rolling off quite a bit of low end. Everything above, pretty much everything below 200 hertz is gone because you don't need it. Pulling out a little bit of kind of like boxiness in the 500 hertz area. A good amount of 3K we're pushing up to give some presence and really bring out the diction and intelligibility, and then some air on top right at about 10K. You know, if you get rid of that, it's dull, it's not as nice and airy and breathy. Put that back in. Then we are doing some more hardware compression on these vocals here. Okay, so are we running?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is one of my favorite pieces. So this is what we've got on our lead vocal and also the vocal double. So this is, it's by DOD, it's the 866 compressor. I bought this a few years ago for like $50 at a garage sale, and recently discovered that it is freaking awesome on lead vocals. So, you know, as you can see here, we're smacking those vocals pretty darn hard. But we're at 4-to-1 ratio, so nothing crazy there. You know, kind of like a fast attack, fast to medium release. And those settings are going to be exactly identical over here for the vocal double as well. And then, okay, so that's our hardware compression for the vocals. And then we do hit this guy. Now this guy I'm just using as a de-esser. So that's just keeping a little bit of that top end tamed. No other dynamics going on. We are setting to a bunch of effects. We're setting to, this is a micro pitch shift, kind of like based off the Eventide H3000 sort of thing. So that gives it some spread. And if we get rid of that, it's not as wide, it's a little more mono. We've got a slap delay. We've got a couple vocal reverbs and a vocal delay. The vocal double is pretty much identical, just less effects. EQ is the same. Now, there's background vocals on this that are pretty involved. They're harmonies, and they're also a call and response, which we'll hear in just a second here.
Adventures of our fries.
So what are we doing here? We're sending them off to the chorus so that they're thick, but that they sit behind the lead vocal. EQ is pretty much the same, but we're getting rid of a lot more of that low-mid kind of mud and boxiness. No de-essing because we're not compressing as hard, and we're doing it with software here.
So, at one point...
Yeah, so we're not going too crazy on that compression there, so didn't need any de-essing. Okay, then we have programmed choir, which, like we said, there's quite a few different aspects to. I'm going to go kind of towards the end of the song here. We'll have a listen to that. So we're also hitting that with a good amount of compression, just so we can kind of tuck it in and bring it up in the mix without anything getting pokey and snappy. Very little EQ. We're just pulling out that kind of mid-range so it doesn't get boxy. And if I take that out, it's kind of muddy, it's woolly. Get rid of that, and it's a little cleaner. That's going to the same hall reverb that the Orchestral is all going to. And then we have this live kind of choir-y thing. It's not really a choir, it's sort of a background vocal, but it's really reverbed out. Here, I'll back up so you can listen to that. And what are we doing here? This is probably just going to be smacking. Yeah. So, lots of compression there on the Waves LA2A. Again, coming in similar to the background vocals, but not as bright, but we're boosting some like high mids, some mids, pulling out some kind of harsh honkiness that we were finding there. Now that is going to the hall reverb. It's also going to another chamber reverb. It's going to the delay, and that's giving us that really just kind of washed out ambient sound that you hear in the end of the track. And that mostly just happens during the fade out.
Remember during the first album when we tried recording choirs for real, like one at a time, one voice at a time?
We didn't try, we used those.
Oh yeah.
That's Oblivion. That's Beast of Oblivion. There's like...
Oh yeah, we use those.
Oh yeah, we use that. There's like 80 tracks of choir in Beast of Oblivion. It's ridiculous.
I don't recommend that, kids at home.
I mean, it wasn't a fun experience, but it worked.
It did.
It did work. But I don't want to do it again. I hope we don't have to do it again. So I think that is pretty much the song. You can look at just this automation lane up here on my main mix. That is just the fade out punch in on that SSL compressor that I showed you. So if we start playing here. starts. And it's a long fade out because old school fade outs are fun, and I don't think nearly enough people do them anymore. I think we should end every song with a fade out. I think that's the only option. Yeah. Yeah. No more endings, just fades. So, that is the magic and work and large amount of stuff that goes into a Solborn song. So I hope this was interesting. Maybe everyone listening to this is now fast asleep. That's okay, you know, sleep is good, and I'm happy to help anyone sleep anytime. But we'll see you all later. Soul babies! Bye!